G'day guys, this is Andrew Price here from BlenderGuru.com and welcome to another Blender tutorial. This time we're going to be getting into some advanced outdoor lighting and texturing. I chose this sort of image sort of to take a friendly stab at the video game industry. Like, how many times have you been playing a video game and then you just run into these red barrels which have just been conveniently placed there by the enemy? Like they thought, We'll hire this enormous army, we'll fortify this base, but we'll leave these massive explosive red barrels lying around so that anyone who has a stone can throw it and bring an entire platoon to ruins, you know? I mean, it kind of breaks the realism for me. I don't know about you guys. So I sort of wondered, where would these red barrels come from? And of course, you would go to Red Barrels Incorporated. So this is the finished scene. As you can see, we're getting into a little bit of outdoor lighting, bit of bounce lighting as well. Something a lot of you guys have, I suppose, been wondering about, as well as texturing. So we're going to be doing this barrel here as well, modeling it, texturing it, putting this little label on it. The wall, texture on the wall, texture on the floor, and then a little logo on the wall as well. We're also going to be doing that fancy outdoor lighting as well. Okay, so this is the final scene, just so you can see it. It's fairly basic. There's a couple of things I won't show you how to do this palette here, by the way. The palette's really optional, and I just threw it in there just because I wanted a little bit of variation to it. So, okay, let's go ahead and open up a new scene in Blender. Now, before we actually start modeling anything, it's important to always have a look at reference photos. So I'm just on Flickr right now, having a look, did a search for oil drum, and as you can see, you get a whole number of really good reference photos that you can use. Now, first thing to note is that not every oil drum looks the same. Some of them have multiple kind of ribs around it like this, and then other ones just have these kind of, one single rib there. This one has more. This one's more sort of straight. I'm not really sure what those little ribs do. I'm assuming they allow it to hold more weight or whatever. The one that I'm actually going to be modeling is sort of one with like kind of 3 ribs around there. So that's just some basic reference photos. But you can see that the can really be split into thirds, essentially. I mean, you model one part, then you've modeled all the other 3 as well. The other 2 as well, I should say. Once you've got the sort of reference image you're going to use, we can start modeling. So I'm going to delete this default cube, and I'm going to replace it with a circle. Now, we're going to be adding a subsurf modifier in a second. So I want to turn down the number of vertices from 32 all the way down to 8. Okay, like that. Now, when we add a subsurf modifier and then set it to level 3, like so, then you can see we've got a nice smooth circle. So you don't want to start with too many vertices, or else the final model is going to be way too high poly, okay? So once we've got that, let's just jump into front mode. I'm going to extrude it up to about there, okay? Now, I'm going to create one of those little ribs, like the main rib is going to be right there on that line. So you can see if I zoom out, you can see this grid here. So I want one of those ribs to be there, and then there's going to be another rib there, and then the top of the can is going to be right there. So this is just, I suppose, a really basic way to, do some measuring. So as I said, I want 3. So I'm going to put one there like that, extrude it up, then extrude it outwards, just slightly past where it sort of finishes, where it starts, sorry. Then extrude it up again, shrink it back in, and then extrude it up again, and then shrink it out to the point at which it started, which is on that kind of line right there. Now I'm going to do the same up here. You could use an array if you wanted to, but I mean, sometimes it's just better just to do this, just get it over with. It's pretty quick, instead of having to bother about merging vertices and stuff like that. Okay, so this is going to be the top part of the can, so it's going to be slightly different. Just going to extrude it, extrude it outwards, up, then scale it inwards, and then extrude it downwards like that. So you get kind of like a nice lip edge. Now I'm going to create a loop cut like that, another loop cut there, just to tighten these edges a bit, like so. And I'll also create a little lip on this edge here as well. Just extrude that out, and then like so. I'm hoping I'm not going too fast for you guys. Sometimes I do go a bit fast, but I don't want to make it boring, Like if you watch some tutorials out there on the internet, sometimes it can get a little bit cumbersome, so I try to avoid that. But there we go. Okay, so that's pretty good. You can model like a top part there and put like a lid and then another little lid there or something. And I did that for my final scene, but I figure if you're going to have the camera almost flat on anyway, you can't really see it. So, I mean, just, yeah, for the sake of brevity, we're not going to model that part there. We're just going to have the camera slightly below it so you can't see it. Okay, now I'm going to position the camera front on. So I'm going to hit Control Alt number pad 0. Now the camera snaps to my location. Okay, like that. Now for the lighting, it's going to be one sun lamp like this, pointing in that direction. And I'm going to set the energy to 5, okay? Now it's hard to sort of, check out, what's a good energy, what kind of, what color and things like that, because we don't have much of a scene yet. But for the sake of, because we're going to be doing the materials for this can in a minute, you want to get the lighting pretty much, close to the final so that you don't have to bother about fiddling with this, both settings afterwards. So I've got one lamp there, one sun lamp there. I'm going to give it a slight yellow color. And I'm going to create a second sun lamp, rotate it about there, and then make it almost flat, okay, like so. And I'm going to make this a kind of a slightly bluey purple color like that, and then give it a 0.7 amount. So really, really subtle. And I'm going to give it a softness size of 2. Turn the samples up to 8. Okay, so that's just, it's not going to really cast much of a shadow. Okay, now let's save this before we do anything else, in case it crashes. Not that I don't trust you, Blender, but you are a little bit crazy sometimes. All right. Okay, so let's render this now, see how it looks. Yay, it looks like a can. Woohoo. All right, let's move this around a bit so we can see what's happening. Okay, so for the materials, we're going to give it a red color, like so. Maybe, so I want to, not to look solid red, like you don't want to just turn that all the way up there or whatever. Just about there. So it's got like a slight amount of green and a slight amount of blue in it. Just, yeah, something like that, kind of like a tomato red color. Tomato, yeah, whatever. Now, texturing. This is the important part. I'm going to create the first texture, and this is going to be called Rust Leak. So we want to create kind of like that kind of look. Where's my reference photos? Maybe one of these can demonstrate it. Maybe, yeah, kind of like that kind of streaky effect, sort of dribbling down the side. This is just chaos. I don't know, where have these drums been? Like, they've just been carted across the entire Pacific Ocean or something. Anyway, okay, so we're going to create a rust leak. So I'm going to use a texture which I grabbed off cgtextures.com, and it is rust leak 07. I'm going to post a link to that on the site so you can grab it quickly. Now I'm going to make the blend mode for this multiply, very important. Let's click both so we can see the effect. When it's just set to mix, then you just get the solid texture and none of this original color showing through. So when you set it to multiply, it takes those dark elements from the texture and overlays it over the top of it, so that you get that effect. Now I want to turn down the amount of it to maybe 0.3, something like that should be fine. And I'm going to give it a little bit of bump map. And when I say a little bit, I mean a really small amount, 0.02, okay? You can do as much as you want, but that's what I'm going to use. Now for mapping, you can just change this to tube like that, and you would get a kind of, you can see it's working. I'll just turn up the color so we can see it happening, by the way. There we go. Okay. So you can see that it's, it's wrapped around it, but you don't have much control over it. So what I like to do is to UV unwrap it anyway. So I'm selecting the seam, which is behind the can. Very important. You don't want to have a seam on the front. And I'm going to hit Control E and then hit Mark Seam. And you'll see that you now have a red line there. So now, if we go to UV Image Editor, if I hit U and then hit unwrap, then you get this. So you can see that the seam is then cut it nicely. So, all of these works fairly well. The problem is that it looks a little bit squiggly. You know what I mean? Like everything's kind of little bit wobbly. I mean, I don't know why it does that. I suppose just because the arrangement of all these vertices has made it warp a bit like that. But a way around it is to just hit U, and instead of clicking unwrap, click cylinder projection. And you get a pretty nice, so everything's kind of a lot more evenly placed now. The only problem is that this kind of vertices, this group of vertices is never in line now. I don't know why it does that. It's almost like, it would be really cool if you click that and click cylinder projection. In fact, it's almost too awesome. So this thing just messes everything up just despite it, just to make your life hard. That's what it seems like sometimes. I mean, and you can go and fix that if you want, and I don't know, try and move some of these around, but I'm just going to leave it there. It doesn't really matter. It's going to be behind the can anyway, so you can't really see it. So yeah, so that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to load in this rust leak image here, and now what I want this this texture to repeat, but I want it to repeat like this. Let me just position everything. Okay, so what is going to happen is this texture is going to be on that line there where there's that rib, where there's the first part of the can. It's going to reach that, and then it's going to start tiling it. So it's then going to, for this second rib down here, it's going to use this part of the texture. So if everything goes well, it should look good. We also need to change it from generated to UV and tube to flat if it's not already. So let's go ahead and render that now. And you get that effect. So as you can see, you've got the rust dripping down there, then you've got it repeating, and then the rust is dripping down there again. So it looks fairly nice. Now I'm going to turn the color down to, let's say, 0.4. So it's really subtle, but that's that's fine for what we want, I suppose. I mean, I've really probably put in too much effort, really, if we can hardly even really see it, but there you go. Okay, one other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get that texture again, rust leak. I'm going to hit number 2 next to it to make it its own unique texture. And I'm going to call this spec. So I'm going to use the exact same texture, but I'm going to make it affect the specularity. Now the reason I've made it its separate texture is that I now want to go here to the colors and turn contrast all the way up to 1. And I think turn the brightness down to a 0.2, okay? Now changing it to UV mapping again. Turn off color, and then turn on specularity, and you'll see it hasn't really affected anything. It's just made it completely white. You need to check RGB to intensity, and there you get that nice effect. So now if we were to render this, it should have that nice effect. I think that looks like the specularity is actually using that color. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Maybe that's just my eyes, but it looks like that's actually purple. I think maybe it's using the blue lamp, I assume. In fact, yes, with this sky lamp, go ahead and turn off specular, and it should fix that. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now you can see the textures affecting the specularity, and it's looking quite nice. Cool. All right. So 2 textures are done. We've got some basic rust leak and specularity. I'm going to add a new texture now, and this one is going to be main rust. Okay. Set it to image. And I'm going to get a drink, excuse me. Much better. All right. Texture that we're going to use for this one is one of my favorites called Rust Scratches 35. That's from CG Textures. And we're going to use UV mapping for it, like so. And I want to turn on multiply, like that. But I also want to turn up the contrast. And if you don't turn up the contrast, what you'll find is that if we set it like that, then the whole color of it becomes a little bit darker because there's almost no solid white parts of that original texture. So it's always overlaying something. So by turning the contrast up to 2, then you get these solid white areas, and then more of the original material color is showing through. Now again, it's up to you how much grunge you really want to have, for your barrel. I'm going to turn this down to 0.4. Let's try 0.4, see how that looks. And I might also give it a little bit of normal amount. Okay, let's see how that looks. A little bit of bump. Yeah, cool, but the bump is way too much. Let's try that again. Okay, and I might turn up the color as well. Okay, so there you go. You can see we're getting some nice kind of effect there. I'm not really a big fan of this lip at the bottom there. It looks a little bit weird. Let me just try and fix that now. Okay, move that up a bit. Scale that in. Maybe add another loop cut right there. Okay. Alright, so it's looking, yeah, a little bit better. Not perfect. Okay. What is perfect, huh? Nothing. Alright, so this next texture I'm going to do is called Fake AO. Now, if you don't know, AO stands for Ambient Occlusion. Occlusion. And, yeah, basically occlusion is, you know, where objects are near or touching other objects in real life, you get some darker kind of shades towards where they're touching. So we're going to fake that by adding a blend texture, like so. Turning on the ramp, and I'm going to make this far right one black, like that. In fact, no. One thing to do, I'm going to make it a purple color, right? You're wondering what I'm doing. This is so we can actually see where the texture is affecting, okay? So I'm going to set the blend amount to vertical, and let's just see how it looks when rendered. Okay, you can see there's some weird stuff going on. Like the text around the other side, and it's kind of giving us this. It looks kind of cool actually, but it's not what we want. We want that purple thing to be at the bottom there. Now I've set it to vertical, so technically, you know, it should work like you'd think it would work, but you have to change these mapping options here. You can set the X and the Z to none, and that will have no effect to it whatsoever. So basically, this blend texture is entirely affected by this Y mapping here. So we're going to change it from Y to Z, and we should see now. There we go. It's now going vertically. So if we click flip, we should have the purple at the bottom. And if we drag this one all the way down, then set it from purple to black, then you have that effect there. So that's basically what we want. That also kind of has the impression that the oil can has been sitting on the ground for a long time, so it's kind of accumulated a lot of grit and gunk at the bottom, which is so it looks a lot nicer than what it did before. So that's why we're having this fake AO effect. Cool. Now I think it's best to also turn down the color amount just so that you don't have it completely showing through. If it's like solid black, it looks a little bit fake. So 0.9 could be nice. Also, I'm not too keen on how specular this is looking, so I'm going to turn that like that. Okay. It's important, by the way, if you've got a specular texture, that the actual specularity of the material is set to 0, and that it's only using the texture. So something important there. So I'm hoping you're getting a lot of texturing tips. It's something I get a lot requested, like, you know, how to do good texturing or whatever. And it was something that took me a while understanding, like specularity and bump mapping and stuff like that. So just thought I'd do a tutorial on it to help some of you guys out. All right. The other thing we're going to do now is I want to create that kind of that caution sign like you see on every video game. It's got like this yellow sign there. So I'm going to add a new texture, and let's call this flammable icon, okay, or flammable sticker. There you go. Flammable sticker. All right. Now, going to change it to image again. And this image is one that I created myself. I kind of traced around one off Google. And this is flammable icon.png. So it's on a transparent background. And I've also used some grunge brushes in Photoshop to cut away at the image. So if you click pre-multiply, you can see the effect that it's having there. So that's how it should look on that can. Now, you do need to do a few things first. If we were to set this to UV, like this, then you would have this effect, okay? So the reason that is, of course, is that it's using... Let me just move this across. Sometimes I can't work as fast as I can talk, so I've got to slow down a bit. All right. Okay, so it's using this kind of UV mapping settings for this texture, which is why, because this image there is then repeating, you get this exact same thing happening for that flammable thing. Now what you could do is change this to flammable icon and then readjust the texture mapping, but then this rust leak would also be affected. So what you need to do, and this was something that took me a while to figure out, a couple of years ago, I was trying to figure out, how can I have two UV mapping textures at the same time? And then I finally realized how to do it. So by default, you've got in your object data settings, I never know the name of those buttons, you go down here and you've got UV texture. So by default, it just uses one UV texture, but you can add another one. So we're going to call this flammable sticker, okay? And now you can see that here it's just created, it's just given us a whole new UV mapping now. Okay, so if you clicked, you can click between the two like that. So you've got that one and then flammable sticker, like so. So now we're changing flammable sticker. Don't get them confused or else you're going to mess up what you've previously done. And we're going to add flammable icon. And I'm going to hit U and then cylinder projection, okay? All right, so now we've set that up, okay, like that. We're going to fiddle with this in a second, but just so I can show you what we're doing. First of all, go to the flammable texture settings, then change it from, in this UV settings there, you can see it's got layer. By default, if there's nothing selected there, it's just going to use the first one, which is UV text. So change it to flammable sticker, okay? So now if we rendered this, we would get that sticker. Now you're saying it's probably looking the same as it did before. That's because we haven't really done anything to this part here. If I scale this upwards, you can see that you've got the two ribs of the can right here. So if I scale this upwards, then it's going to make the sticker smaller. Kind of, it's hard to kind of work out at first. Like, you know, if you scale it down, it should make it smaller. But no, scale it upwards and it'll make it smaller. So if we render this now, then you get this effect. One other thing is you can notice that the sticker is repeating. To fix that, go to the mapping options and change it from repeat to clip. And what that'll mean is it'll only use it once directly where the UV texture is, and then it won't use it again. It'll just make everything else black. So if we rendered this now, then you get that effect. Now you'll notice that the sticker is quite stretched. So to make the aspect ratio correct, we're actually going to scale this the UV mapping along the x-axis, so it's making it a little bit longer. And now if we render it, you can see that it's looking pretty good. And I might just move that along slightly, and there you go. So that is essentially how to how to whack a flammable sticker on something. And I'm just trying to, okay, I'm going the wrong way now. Trying to get the aspect ratio looking right, and if I might make the sticker a little bit bigger still. And maybe a little bit smaller again. This is riveting tutorial. Just me slowly adjusting things. All right, that's looking pretty good, I'd say. Okay, now let's get on to the scene. I'm going to drop a plane on the ground, or the plane is going to be the ground, I should say. Okay, now I'm positioning it there. I try and make it so that, just so it's easier to find things, I try and make the ground there, and then I'm going to make a wall behind it, but exactly on the axis, just so it's easier to fiddle around with. So I'm going to duplicate that plane, rotate it by 90 degrees, and then drop it here. It's important that they line up, you know, at the point, otherwise you'll have parts of the texture hiding when we add the texture in a second. So like that is pretty good. Just so they're touching. Okay. And I want to move the camera. Whoa, this is, yeah, it's really hard to see when you've got that thing in the way. All right, let's move this camera back. All right. To about there, I'd say. Okay. So I want to duplicate these cans a few times. Make them completely random. Don't want to use any arrays or anything like that. We're just duplicating them, just making it look like they were placed there. Okay, and also make sure you rotate them a little bit as well. You don't want them all to be directly dead on, or else that little flammable sticker thing is going to look really obviously in the way, and yeah, obviously duplicated. And I'm also going to drop a few over here as well. Let me just see where the actual, okay, the seam is in the back. It's an easy way to find out where the flammable logo is without rendering, is to see where that little red seam is, and then the logo is going to be on the front there. So just a little tip. Okay, rotate that, and drop another one there. Okay, I might move this in a bit. Okay, so that's looking pretty good, I'd say. Let's go ahead and render that now. See how it looks. Will take a little bit longer than previously. Okay, it's looking good. The walls are looking completely white, but we're going to fix that soon. Yeah, let's go ahead and fix it now, actually. Might as well. Might as well stop beating around the bush and get into it. So I'm going to add a UV image editor. Now this image that I'm going to be adding here is, again, one I found off CG Textures, and it is called Plaster White Dirty 107. This is a really cool texture. I sort of fiddle around with the different ones, but this one looks really nice. Looks like a really kind of old, beaten up kind of wall. It's partly cement, partly been painted on. But yeah, it looks really perfect for what we want. So, yes, now we're not actually going to be UV texturing the wall because there's no point. It's just a flat wall. The reason I've added it here in this the UV image editor is so that you can see the aspect ratio of the texture. Because if I was just to add that texture to this white square, it would be stretched because this is more a rectangular shape. So basically, you want the plane to be almost the same aspect ratio as the image is. So that's why I put it there. In the background, like that. I'm just trying to work out. I'd say that looks pretty good in my opinion. Scale that down a touch. Okay, about there should be fine. And I want the sort of the whole thing to be in frame of the camera, so you can scale it down till it fits the scene. All right. So this is really easy texture. New texture, no specularity. Texture, image, and then just select that image we just added. Plaster white dirty. And if you want, you can give it a little bit of bump mapping as well. Let's go 0.06, something like that. Again, you can just leaving it as generated because you haven't done any UV unwrapping. So if we rendered that now, it should look pretty good. Yep, there you go. You see that the sun is quite intense. We can turn that down if you want, but yeah, it should be all right for now. I really wanted to go for kind of a Mirror's Edge kind of look. I haven't played Mirror's Edge, but I was reading an article on the team that made Mirror's Edge and how they really wanted that kind of bleached, really overexposed look for, you know, like that they wanted the city to look quite grungy, but also, yeah, like really overexposed and bright and white. And yeah, it was really interesting. So I wanted to go for that kind of effect. All right, now the ground, again, I'm going to load it into the UV image editor. This is a texture I use all the time. One of my favorites, it is, if I can find it. Oh, no, it's not even there. So I've put it in another folder. I gotta find it now. Users, Andrew. Good grief. It says fun. Fun for you guys. Textures. Texture is called Concrete Dirty. Where is it? This one. There you go. Concrete Dirty 108. Really, really nice texture. One of my favorites. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. Just scale it so that it's the right kind of aspect ratio of the texture. I'd say that looks pretty good. New material. No specularity. Image. And then Concrete Dirty. And again, I'm going to give it a slight bump map as well. Alright, so if we render this now, it should be looking pretty good so far. Fingers crossed. Cool. Awesome. Alright, one other thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to give it some environment lighting and some ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion, going to set that to multiply and set it to 0.7 so it's not quite intense. That'll just make, yeah, just give some like sort of more darker shading around the areas where there should be shading. And the environment lighting is to sort of simulate, you know, you could go overboard and add lamps for everything, kind of bouncing off everything. But to assume that this is quite a large scene and there's like a warehouse behind you or something, chances are there's going to be a little bit of bounce lighting from everything. So environment lighting gives it some nice even lighting over everything. So by default, it's set to energy value of 1. It's a bit intense. I'm going to set it to 0.4. And it'll, by default, give it just a white environment lighting. I want to give it a more, yeah, a more kind of bluey type lighting. So it's kind of reflecting the sky kind of look. So something like that. And you have to set it from white to sky color. We're setting it to ray trace, and we're not going to be using indirect lighting. I know you're probably thinking, why not? Because in your final scene you had bounce lighting. Well, we're going to get to that later, but we're not going to be turning on indirect lighting. So let's render it now and see how it looks. So the wall's looking not so bright now, which is good. And everything else has got a little bit more shading on it. One other thing you might want to do with these cans here is turn on some reflections, okay? And that'll really help improve the realism of it, because currently there's not really much interaction between these cans and it looks a little bit boring. So turn on 0.2 reflection, give it some Fresnel. Fresnel maybe set to 2, and then 1.5 for the blend amount. Okay, that just makes it so it's not reflective all over. And then turn the gloss amount down to 0.9 so that you don't get that clear, sharp reflection, but yeah, more of a kind of even, softer reflection over everything. And that should help to improve the realism of everything. You could see that already those barrels are kind of interacting with the wall just because they're reflecting off everything. So it's looking nicer already. Good. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add those nice shadows coming from above to sort of make it look like it's kind of partly in a warehouse kind of look. It just makes it look a lot nicer than just a solid, bright light kind of thing. It's kind of like an interesting way to sort of make it look like there's more of a scene than what's currently in front of you. So although you're not really modeling anything else, but you can play with things or sort of make it look like there's more to the scene just by having some more interesting lighting. And it's something that I don't think a lot of artists really do a lot of, is adding more interesting shadows and things like that. So that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to create a plane, make it lengthways like that, and I'm going to give it an array modifier, set that to 5, okay? Now, if you increase the count of that, you can see we get, it repeating, obviously. And depending on, how thick you want everything, you can scale it down a bit. I think that looks pretty good. All right, and you want it out of frame, so just move it up out of frame. And if we were to render this now, you can see the effect that it's going to have, like so. So the scene looks a lot more interesting than it did before. One thing to note though is that these shadows are really strong, really sharp, and the sun doesn't really look like that. Even on like a clear day, it rarely has a really clear cut shadow like that. So what I'm going to do is grab this sun lamp here, and I'm going to set the soft size to 0.05. So it's just slightly softer than normal, but it'll have a nicer effect. I'm also going to turn these samples up to 8, or let's just set it to 6. For your final render, maybe set it up to 8. I think mine I set to 12 or something, but just so it's a lot faster, we're just going to leave it at 6. And you can see it has a lot nicer looking effect to it than it did before, so that's looking pretty good. The other thing I want to do is to create kind of what looks like an easement. So there's like a part where there's a shadow at the top. So I'm going to add another plane like that, extrude it lengthways. As you can see, this takes a really long time to set these sort of things up. Just add a plane, drop it in, and let's render that, see how that looks. There you go. So it looks pretty cool. I might make it a little bit thinner though. Okay, move it up like that. Cool. And I'm also going to duplicate it, rotate it, and then place one there, one here, and then let's scale that across. So now we've got that kind of effect there. Okay, let's render this, see how it looks. Okay. I'd say that's looking fairly good. Now, one thing that I'm sure you're all wanting to know is how to do bounce lighting, how to get kind of the interaction of those red barrels against this concrete. So to do that, I know you're probably hoping that we could use the indirect lighting function. However, what I found was that indirect lighting does not work very well yet. In fact, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't do colors, which is a really big problem. Like if this was a black and white scene, it would probably be okay. But currently, if you use indirect lighting, it's not going to reflect the colors of things, at least not yet, at least not what I found. In fact, also, if you turn on indirect lighting, it only works if you use approximate gathering instead of ray tracing. So it also doesn't do shadows. And to be honest, I think global illumination is probably a little bit overrated. I mean, it's cool when it works, but it does kind of feel like a little bit of a cheat a cheat tool, you know what I mean? Like some, artists use 3ds Max or whatever with V-Ray, and they just turn on global illumination, fire off a render, and it looks good, but there's not really any emotional thought into the bounce lighting. And that's really quite clear when you see a lot of architectural renders out there. In fact, I was reading an interview with, I think, an art director from Pixar, and he said that they rarely use global illumination in Pixar for their films. They prefer to do everything by hand, and he said that they do that because they have a lot more control over how the end look, a lot more control over the bounce lighting as opposed to just leaving everything to the computer. So although they have the capabilities to use indirect lighting and global illumination, they prefer to do everything by hand. So just something to note, I suppose. Don't feel like you're missing out on a lot because you're using Blender. It is actually teaching you something. If you have to add bounce lighting by hand, then you are learning a lot more about how lighting works than if you were to just push a button that said global illumination. So something to note. Okay. So to do bounce lighting, now I got that little spiel out of the way, I'm going to add an area lamp, and I'm going to rotate it like that by 90 degrees, so it's flat, and I'm going to drop it inside this barrel here. Before I do, I want to make it, because basically if you have a look here, this whole segment here of the barrel that's red would be casting a red shadow, or a red light, sorry, in this direction. So kind of in this area here. So I'm positioning this about there. I'm going to turn on rectangular area shape and then turn up that X value. Okay, so it's like that. So it's sort of filling that part of the barrel, so it should. And drop it in there and then turn up the Y amount. So I want this to be basically as tall as the barrel is. So about there. Should be fine. And I'm going to make it the same sort of color as the barrel. So kind of that color. And the distance, very important. You don't want that to be really big, or else it's going to cast that light way too far. So if you set it to a 0.2, which you're thinking now is probably too small, it will actually look good. The other thing I'm sure you're wondering is, how is the light going to escape that barrel now that it's sitting inside it? Okay, so answer to that, I'm going to grab that lamp there, hold down Shift, select these this wall and the floor, then press M, and then hold down Shift, and then click the next layer. Okay, so now if we go to layer 2, you've got the floor and the plane, the floor and the wall still on layer 1, but on layer 2, you've also got this lamp. Also, make sure you move the lamp just to layer 2, okay? So yeah, layer 1 is everything there, but then layer 2's just got the lamp, okay? And now with that lamp selected, I'm going to click this layer only, and if we render this now, you can see just down there you've got a little bit of red light. Now you might think that would be enough because you want it to look subtle, but when you've got the bright white light shining down, it's really hard to see these red colors. So you need to crank it up. So let's set that to 30, and let's see the difference. And there you go. Now you've got a nicer looking red color. So now moving back to first layer, I'm going to duplicate that lamp, and I'm going to add it to all of these ones here. Just one there, and then one there as well. And for this wall, this is where you get that nice cool effect of the red reflecting onto the wall. Let's jump to the second layer so we can see it. Okay, so that's just the bounce lighting essentially, combined with the environment lighting, which is why there's that slight blue color to everything. So now, let's render it out and let's see how it looks. Alright, so against the wall you can see there's a slight red color coming, and on the floor there's not really much showing at all. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's, let me just check with the lamps. Sometimes not all the lamps have this layer only selected. Okay, it's this layer only. That's a bit weird. Might have to crank these up, I think. So let's turn them up to 50. I think let's just hold down Shift, select all of these. This one as well. Hit Object Data, so they're now all sharing the same data for the lamp. Okay. Alright, so it's a little bit brighter now. So hopefully we can see it a bit better. Okay, so it's looking pretty good, but down here, these lamps here need to be a lot brighter because we still can't really see much of a bounce effect. So I mean, really, it's a matter of just going back and forth and then just playing with the settings. I might try setting the distance to 0.4. The one on the wall there, I'm going to make it its own separate lamp. Let's just set that to 0.2 and maybe move it up slightly just so we can see it a bit better. Maybe turn it up to 60. All right, so render it now. Okay, now I think it's possibly a little bit over the top. On the wall there, it's a little bit too much. And down here, I think that might be okay, but I need to remove that lamp that's sitting over there. So this one here, because that barrel there's not really getting much light anyway, so I might set that down to 20 maybe. Maybe move it up a little bit as well, because actually the bottom of that barrel down there has a lot of shadow on it, so I might also just move that across. Set it about there. This one here, turn that down. So really you want these lamps to be sort of the exact shape of where the sun is, and you don't want to go further than where the sun is. So you want to sort of move them around a bit. And I've changed, whoop. Make this one its own entity, okay. And move these up a bit again, okay. And I think maybe these are a little bit too bright now, so maybe 35. And the wall is a little bit too bright as well, so let's set that to 40. Now maybe 50, but move it down a little bit. Come on, come on. Please look good, please look good. All right, wall's looking pretty good there. And down here. Come on, look good, look good. Yeah. All right, so it's looking around about the way I want it. So it's a matter of, adding lamps where they need to be and experimenting with the energy value and the color and things like that so that you don't get it too overboard. You want it to look subtle, like over there, that's looking probably a little bit too much. So I'm going to turn that down just slightly. But yeah, the other thing I also did was I created some, just on the tops of the barrels, created a square area lamp like that. And then just made it point slightly against the wall, like so, like that, and then just make it, let's just move to the first layer so we can see the effect it's having. So it's just having a nice kind of light reflection off the tops of the barrels. So yeah, kind of like this, and that should, I think, look pretty good. Let's have a look at that. Alright, let's turn up the energy for this one. Maybe set it to 3. Maybe set it to 15. I don't know why that one's not showing up as much. And maybe that is too much now. So let's set it to 10. Set the distance to 0.3. I mean, this must be pretty tedious for you guys watching. So I'm gonna leave the bounce lighting there. You can see, just to, I suppose, demonstrate, that's sort of how long it can take to set it up, and it's not just a matter of just throw it in there and then it works, and it's a magic bullet and it works every time. You do have to experiment with things to get the desired result that you want. Okay, so bounce lighting's done now. Now for the final thing for this scene I'm going to add is a logo on the wall. So again, this is kind of the piece de resistance for the scene, just to give it that nice final touch. I'm going to add an image, and this image is one that I made myself, and it is Red Barrels Incorporated. Set it to pre-multiply so you don't get that effect. That's because it's a PNG on transparent, so you need to click pre-multiply. And we're going to use UV texture mapping. Now, we haven't done any UV texture mapping yet, so let's do that. Let's open up UV image editor, and let's load in that red barrel logo. There you go. And it's usually, it flips it around the wrong way, so let's just check. You turn on that little button down there, and then when you select a vertice over here, then it's going to select the same one over there. So you can see that it's round the wrong way. So I'm going to select that, rotate it, and now everything is the way it should be. Now I'm going to scale that up, position it about there, should be good. And I'm going to turn it from mapping to clip, and let's just move to the second layer just so we can see it. Okay, it's a little bit small, I think. So scale it down a bit again. re-render it. Scale it down a bit again. And yeah, that's looking pretty good, I think. Just move it up a little bit. Okay, cool. It is coming to the end of the scene now, so I'm going to go ahead and render this. Now we're going to do a little bit of compositing. So for the compositing, just while this is rendering, I'll just tell you, we're going to add in a little bit of glow, making it look like the sun is kind of just sort of overexposed a little bit, so the glow is kind of showing through. Also going to give it a sharpen effect, as well as a vignette. So let's just wait for this to finish, and then we'll flip over to the compositor. Hoping you guys have possibly learned a couple of things. I'm hoping I've learned a couple of things. Otherwise, my job has really failed. So, okay. All right. That's, oh yeah, the other thing, the logo itself could probably, don't set it to solid color. Give it a 0.8 amount just so that it's slightly opaque. I'm not going to re-render it. You guys can go ahead and figure out how that would, how it would look. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is add that sharpen node. If you've never used a sharpen node, let me demonstrate how kick-ass it is. Okay, so change it from soften up. I'll slow down. Okay, first things first, add a new node, filter, click filter. All right, then connect it to that main image render layer there. Connect it into the viewer node. Change it from soften to sharpen. There you go. Sorry if I'm going really fast, guys. I just don't want to make it cumbersome. All right, so sharpen is set to 0.1, and you can see how it looked before in comparison to now. Like, just the default, everything looks slightly blurry. You add a sharper node and it really brings out the detail, especially in that wall there. Possibly a little bit too much, so I might turn it down to 0.06. And yeah, that looks pretty good. Next thing I'm going to add is that glow that I said we were going to do. So to get the glow effect, you add a blur node, etc. But we don't want the entire scene to be blurry, obviously. So I need to limit it to just the really bright areas. So to do that, I'm adding an RGB curve. And I'm going to turn down this RGB amount down to something like that. That looks pretty good, actually. So we've just got, those areas are black, and then these areas here are quite white. And now if I add a blur node, like this, set it to fast Gaussian. And then let's say 50. Okay, so everything's looking quite blurry there. Now if I add a mix node, set it from mix to screen over the top, then you get that really kind of nice misty, glowy type effect. I might maybe turn it down to 30 so it's not over the top. And also this screen amount down to maybe 0.2. You don't want it to be too obvious, guys. You want it to keep it subtle. Don't over composite things. Over compositing things is always worse than no compositing, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? All right, final thing we're going to add is a vignette, which is those darkened corners. Something that, usually always looks pretty good. So I'm going to add a lens distortion node first. Okay, let's have a look. Turn the distort amount all the way up to 1. Then we're going to add a math node. Connect that to the top input there. Set it to greater than. Add a viewer node so we can see what it's doing. Set the value to 0. So now I've got pretty much solid white circle there. And now we're going to add a blur node. Set it to fast Gaussian. And I might change it to relative. Let's go that 15 and 10. 5. Not sure what would look better. 10 and maybe 20. Because the X and Y, obviously have to be, in relation to the, dimensions and the aspect ratio of the thing. So they're not exactly the same, 20, 10. I'm also going to add now a mix node. And we're going to combine those two together. So the scene with that vignette by setting it from mix to multiply. So just the dark areas over the top of it. And now if we add a viewer node and connect that, you can see the effect that it's having if we turn that all the way up to 1. The edges are really a nice darker shade now, so that looks pretty good. And if you really, really wanted to, I didn't for mine actually. It's like one of the first times I didn't, but I might just play with it now, just see if we can possibly improve the colors slightly. If I just turn the yellows down a touch and then that to blue. No, maybe turn the highlights up to yellow and then the midtones down to blue. Yeah, there you go. You got a nicer looking effect. But there you go, guys. That concludes the tutorial. Hoping you found something useful in it. By all means, please post a comment. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like. Anything, if you'd like me to slow down, that's something some people tell me to slow down, Andrew, slow down. I can't understand you. Your accent's hard enough, and then you talk at 100 miles an hour. So, all right, give me some feedback, guys. If there's something you didn't like, or there's something I don't know, some more tips or other tutorial topics you want me to, give a tutorial on, by all means, leave a comment, let me know, and otherwise, thanks very much for watching.